In the midst of online shooter games, mobile spin-off titles, and Electronic Arts' general nonsense, it's easy to forget about the original Plants vs. Zombies, and how amazing a game it was. Back in 2009, PopCap was at the peak of their form, riding high off the success of Peggle and Bejeweled. They were primed for a mega hit, but what would it be? How would the then kings of casual break into mainstream cultural relevance? Well, to understand that, it's important to understand what video games looked like at the time. This was the era of the Wii, where the line in the sand of casual versus hardcore really started to be drawn. While Nintendo was being blindsided by a gigantic influx of customers they never had before, everyone else was climbing over one another to make the most gamer games they could. It definitely sends a message when games like Boom Blox and Frontline's Fuel of War are right next to each other on store shelves. Let this go down in history as the first time anybody ever talked about Frontline's Fuel of War. Yet, in all of this, there was one group of players that were left wanting: strategy game enthusiasts. With the exception of Command & Conquer 3 and Sins of a Solar Empire the previous year, these folks were chomping at the bit for huge games, especially compared to RPG fans, MMO fans, open world fans, and of course FPS fans who had their pick of the litter around this time. So the industry was primed for a game to come along that both bridged the gap between two defined demographics and filled a niche that was starved for content. Meaning PopCap was in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. From myths dating back to the 18th century to cultural phenoms like Night of the Living Dead and The Walking Dead, the idea of a corpse being reanimated and becoming something inhuman and horrifying in the process is a mega trope that has well and truly transcended its origins in Haitian folklore. Zombies are such a concrete idea of general danger, yet they are malleable enough that they've been used to represent any number of different societal woes, from disease to mindless consumerism. Even Warm Bodies, silly as it was, had themes of racism and societal inequality. But crucially for video games, zombies make excellent enemies. Their very existence is a violation of basic human principles. They're generally depicted as mindless, violent, and monstrous. This means you get all the power fantasy of annihilating swaths of people with the weapon of your choosing without them actually being people. Bonus points if you establish that their condition is irreversible, meaning the player is even more morally justified in destroying them en masse. All that considered, it's funny that in the era of Dead Rising and Resident Evil 4, one of the most successful games to tackle the subject had the audacity to make them cute. The original Plants vs. Zombies is as much a puzzle game as it is a strategy/tower defense title. The proceedings only start out simple, with bog-standard zombies slowly shambling their way down your lawn to try and reach your house, and subsequently the delicious brains inside. But everything starts to escalate once variants start rearing their heads, requiring new tools being added to your arsenal to help fend them off. Chompers instantly defeat the tougher ones armored with cones and metal buckets, cactus plants to pop the balloons of normally invincible flyers, and the ever-present sunflower, who single-handedly enables you to build up your defense fast enough to deal with the incoming horde. The three key elements that make all this work are: 1. You get a preview of all the zombie types you'll be dealing with in the upcoming stage. which is important because 2. You have a limited number of plants you can bring from your collection into battle, forcing you to make hard decisions about which ones to take. Can you really afford to cut an offensive tool you've come to rely on in favor of something more suited to this enemy type? Or one of the special advanced plants, which are very strong but have to be planted on top of a specific basic plant, locking down your options even further. Experience will teach you something that makes this decision much easier, though. 3. Every problem in this game has multiple solutions. Flyers can also be dealt with by using these fans normally used to clear out fog in the 4th set of levels. Bucketheads can have their armor nullified by a magnet shroom that itself is also highly effective against digging zombies and kamikaze zombies, which only sounds overpowered until you realize that mushrooms sleep during the daytime stages, meaning you need yet another plant to wake them up and take advantage of their powerful abilities. And all of them are weak to the myriad of exploding plants, also known as TSPPs, or Temporary Solution Permanent Problem, referring to the fact that you will run out of bombs and currency to buy them with before the zombies stop attacking, leaving the emphasis on more enduring additions to your lawn. A problem that can be alleviated even further by buying upgrades from your neighbor Dave's shop, which, God, Dave is just the best. Strategy heads quickly discovered that this seemingly simple game had mountains of hidden depth, rewarding careful planning and clever setups with a truly impenetrable defense. Skills you will need as the enemy variants become trickier and trickier to deal with. You feel like a genius when you get this game right, which is exactly the kind of rush fans of the genre crave, all without sacrificing that initial approachability that allows anybody to pick this game up and know what they're doing, including folks in the then relatively new Let's Play community. There is no doubt in my mind that YouTube videos of PvZ helped spread awareness of just how good it was, because that's how I found out about it. The now classic playthrough by YouTube alumni Nintendo Capri-sun helped me make the decision to not only give it a shot, but also to download Steam in the first place. These videos are so influential that I not only use his general techniques to this day, but that term I mentioned earlier, TSPP, was coined by him and still widely used by PvZ fans today. So, thank you, NCS. This episode would not exist without you. So, the game is good. Really good. So good that it was solely responsible for a giant publisher wanting to buy up the company it was attached to. But does it follow through on this momentum all the way to the end? So many games I've played recently that had tons of potential are now ruined in my mind because they refused to stick the landing. Plants vs. Zombies has no such hang-ups. The zombies attack your front yard, your backyard, and even your roof during all hours of the day and night. Makes you wonder how tweaked out and exhausted your character is by the end of all this. And another errant thought you might have is, where are these zombies coming from? Well, as the sun sets on your roof defense, you get a very cryptic letter from a person you've never met. And Dave comes to tell you about its sender.
Uh-oh, he's here. Better get ready. It's gonna be one heck of a fight. Listen though, I know what his weakness is. You have to hit him in the pancreas. No, that was a different guy. You have to kick him in the... You have to press up, up, down, down, left, right, Wait, I remember, it's... Oh no!
Meet Dr. Edgar Zombos and his giant zombot. Is it made out of scrap metal? Or bosses are handled a little differently than other stages in PvZ. Instead of having to worry about managing your sun, plants are fed to you automatically via this conveyor belt at the top of the screen. While this does eliminate the slow burn satisfaction that comes from a meticulously planned defense, it's to a boss fight's benefit, because the moment-to-moment feels much more dynamic and exciting. The main way the Zombot puts pressure on you is by summoning its own zombies. It adds this pseudo-PvP feel to the fight, where you're trying to outsmart an opponent with superior placement. The zombies at his disposal even get more dangerous as the battle goes on, upgrading from the bog-standard walkers to ones with armor, explosives, and even vehicles. His other attacks include stomping on any plants placed too close to him, and occasionally dropping his head down to create either a fireball or snowball that will slowly roll your way, crushing everything in its path, including the roof cleaners, which are a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card if zombies reach the end of a lane. This is also the phase of the fight where you can actually damage him. And this is where you can get creative with how you accomplish that. You obviously want to hold on to either an ice shroom or a jalapeno to deal with the different boulders Zomboss will roll your way. But if you have an extra, or are just super confident he'll summon a snowball, you can use an ice shroom to instead freeze his robot in place and make him vulnerable for longer before he rises up outside your grasp again. He's got his own tricks to mess with you, too. In the second half of the battle, he starts doing even more to disrupt your defense. He can now summon those bungee zombies from hell that everyone hates, and oh yeah, he drops a freaking Winnebago on you! You know, everyone makes the joke about how the roof of your character's house can withstand a hit like that. I want to know how it can do that while also supporting the full weight of an undead Jaeger. Playing this fight again recently, I forgot how tense it is. Losing half your back line under Dave's camper van may seem completely unfair on the surface, but the game is so meticulously balanced that what it really achieves is keeping the battle interesting. You never get complacent in this fight, and you certainly never feel like you're truly 100% in control at all times. You simply have to fight on, watching his mech take more and more visible damage, every mechanical backfire signaling another step closer to victory, and holding your breath every time he comes down, hoping you can clinch it this time. And finally, when you least expect it, the mech finally can't take anymore. It falls apart in a brilliant series of explosions, and as Zomboss waves the white flag of surrender, a single trophy pops out from the cockpit. A silver-plated testament to the safety of your brains. Want as I am to do around these parts, I simply must highlight the music in this battle. You could have the greatest fight in the world, but if you don't have an equally good track to go alongside it, it simply will not hit nearly as hard as it could. Laura Shigihara was up to that task. Brainiac Maniac is a wonderful capstone to Plants vs. Zombies, conveying a sense of urgency and intensity that simply doesn't exist in the rest of the game. Like, most of PvZ's soundtrack could be described as pleasant. Even when it's trying to be menacing, it's a little too chill to really make you feel uncomfortable. There's a big gap between Fog Stage and Silent Hill 2's Betrayal, let's say that. Brainiac Maniac is, in part, effective because it bucks this trend. The hard left turn it takes from the rest of the soundtrack is enough to make you stand up and take notice, while still being melodic and upbeat enough to still feel like a PvZ track. It's no wonder such talent as Laura's continued on to other games like To the Moon, Deltarune, and her own original title, Rakuen. It's a crime that this track never appeared again in the series outside of a few minuscule homages here and there. It's a shame more of the series isn't closer to this title. Don't get me wrong, there have been good games made in this series since the original PvZ, Heroes and the original Garden Warfare specifically. But intent always shines through. Execs and stockholders don't care about making a unique, special kind of gaming experience. Cuts will be made, demands to follow trends and change the game in objectively horrible ways will be placed onto the shoulders of the development team, and if anything good comes out of that, it will be in spite of top brass and not because of them. The debacle of the PvZ 3 beta is proof of that. And to all the creative types in my audience, know that there's a lesson here for you, too. Don't just make a puzzle game, or a competitive shooter, or a Facebook title that goes absolutely nowhere just for the sake of it. Do yourself a favor and take a second to stop. Gather up those games that inspire you and really analyze why they worked as well as they did. You might be surprised what you learn.